Every country has those.
Sure. And it is, it's certainly not a moral thing, whatever you call it in whatever language, to go around being a tattletale. But it seems to me that there's one giant exception, and that is particularly executive branch employees ratting on their bosses.
Exactly.
It seems like the morality goes exactly the other way there.
You're absolutely right about that. A lot of people don't like the word, a lot of whistleblowers don't really like the word whistleblower. They think there's something, it has a bad ring to it, and certainly a lot of people do look down on it, especially bosses of any color, in or out of the government, hate the idea of whistleblowing, and they do all they can to promote the idea that it is equivalent to snitch, rat, tattletale, as you say. It's funny to use those words because, let me tell you quickly, an actual experience I had with that. I was getting an award in Germany for whistleblowing, and it was from the Federation of Judges in Germany, and also in association with the Federation of German Scientists. And before I got the award, which had been given once or twice before, biannually, I think, I asked the judge who was going to present me present the award, who was in fact a judge of their administrative Supreme Court. And I said, what is the German word for whistleblowing? And he said, he thought for a minute, and there were some other judges present, and they all thought. He said, I don't think there is a German word for whistleblowing. That's why it's a whistleblowing award, spelled with a W. And I said, well, what's the closest German equivalent, do you think? So he thought for a minute, and then he said, Verräter. And the others nodded. Yes, Verräter. I said, well, what's that? I don't speak German. Traitor. So I said, perhaps there's another alternative here. So he thought for a moment, and he said, Hetzer. And again, they all agreed. And that meant tattletale. So I thought, well, it's pretty much the same associations in English. And the truth is that you're almost stuck with the word whistleblower to describe what you're talking about, the revelation of wrongdoing from an insider to an organization, to outsiders, to outside authorities, or to the public. Always at risk. That's an element of it, because doing that is always very risky of your job, if not prosecution. So there's an element of courageous truth-telling to this, and from inside an organization about wrongdoing or deception within that organization to outsiders. And it's, I would say, obviously you can say I'm self-interested here, but I wouldn't have gotten in this position if I didn't have this understanding to start with, which led to my actions. It's a good thing, generally a good thing. Obviously the person can be mistaken as to what he or she is looking at, or its implications, or the consequences of putting out the truth. Anybody, you can be wrong. But in terms of your perception that wrongdoing is happening here and covered by secrecy and could be stopped or obstructed by telling the truth, I would say it's generally a good thing. But that's not the way, of course, people, the bosses or the people in the team, look at it. And interestingly, in our society as well as Germany, the boss's attitude is accepted by most of the people.
Right. And now, you know what I got to say here, that this is among the most intriguing parts of your extremely important book, Secrets. This really does blow my mind, honestly. And you describe so well the psychology of an executive branch employee with responsibility, and the way that the incentives are set for them to go along to keep their mouths shut for 40 years about the worst things in the whole world. They will keep secrets. For you to take the papers and give them to the papers was such an outstanding and incredible thing. The rest of, with the exceptions excluded, the rest of them, that's why y'all are the exceptions, the rest of them will internalize the responsibility to keep the most horrible crime secret because of there's their oath, their fear of losing their job, their fear of going to jail, their need to want to impress the boss in advance further, and then they can do something about it, and on down the line. Please explain to the audience. And everybody go read Secrets, too.
Well, you've laid it out pretty well. Not much needs to be added, except what we were just saying. You could add on to your list of reasons, and that is that really a lot of them do have the feeling of either a moral dilemma on the issue, or it doesn't even rise to a dilemma because they do see morally that what they're called on to do is to keep that particular promise of keeping the secret, and they would feel guilty. It isn't entirely careerism or fear, though that's probably the main aspect. But I would say a very important aspect is a feeling that they would feel guilty if they broke that promise, even in a situation where, and this they rarely think about, where they have made a higher promise in their oath of office to support and defend the Constitution. And I think if they confronted the conflict between those two promises, some of them at least would realize that the oath to the Constitution takes precedence. But I don't think they ever do confront in their minds the thought that that oath might have some real substance to it and might contradict other obligations, orders they've gotten, promises they've made. It was Rumsfeld, of all people, who said the day after the Pentagon Papers started to be published, said about them, and I'm quoting here, pulled it off my shelf here, that out of the gobbledygook in the Pentagon Papers comes a very clear thing. He says you can't trust the government, you can't believe what they say, and you can't rely on their judgment. Very true. That's what, of course, Bradley Manning, the guy who alleged, if he did reveal this, and we have yet to learn his side of it, but let's suppose hypothetically here that he didn't believe it, or whoever did reveal this information. That's what they were looking at. And then Rumsfeld goes on to say, and the implicit infallibility of presidents, which has been an accepted thing in America, is badly hurt by this, because it shows that people do things that the president wants to do, even though it's wrong, and the president can be wrong. And when I read that, it gave me a very good impression of Rumsfeld. I thought, wow, late in the game here, I thought it came from the Oval Office tapes, which were revealed very much later. I thought, wow, the guy has his feet on the ground, he's pretty sharp there. And the second thought was, how could he have done the lying and the wrongful things later with that clear-cut perception? He'd looked at the Pentagon Papers, he'd gotten this lesson, which couldn't be said better, and how do you explain his later career?
Well, because the lesson he learned was that this was a terrible thing, that people would lose their faith in the president to do even the wrong things.
Well, that's you're absolutely right. And one other thing, the lesson he learned was, that was bad, yes, though he didn't say it in that particular paragraph.
Right.
But the other thing I think that he learned was, and the president can get away with it. People do keep their mouths shut. They will obey, even though the president says it's wrong. You can do it, and you can get away with it, and you can count on their silence, as the Pentagon Papers demonstrate. And that's a true conclusion about reality, about that he could get away with it, and that you don't have to proceed to go ahead and do the wrong that you can get away with. But since the president ordered it, that's what he did do, like everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Well, and as far as the importance of this and exposing crimes, there's too many to count. We know that much. Dick Cheney announced on September 16th, half this war is going to be fought in the darkness. And it's been more than half, and we already know they're doing torture experiments on them, like Nazis, Dan. And we know that there's got to be, Walmart's full of papers that demand by justice to be exposed to the light of day. If it's not really 250,000 documents to WikiLeaks in this case, it ought to be. So please take this time to make your case directly to any government employees who end up ever listening to this thing on MP3 format tomorrow or years from now, why it's time for them to do the right thing. We are in the era of the permanent crisis here, and we need a little bit of help from inside with the facts.
Well, you've made the case there. I don't need to make it more, but I'll just add my voice to it. Whoever put out that video, and let's say That is who is charged at the moment, hypothetically or tentatively here. We'll know more later. But as of now, Bradley Manning is charged with doing this. If he did the right thing. Whoever did it did the right thing and should be admired, congratulated, thanked, and emulated. I hope that he did, as